Good morning, Neil.
Good morning, Mark.
I think you know that I always enjoy having you on the show.
I always enjoy being here.
I've got to be honest, today, I don't think
Mm,
I'm looking forward to this one in quite the same way as normal. Since you and I last spoke, we've seen lots of construction company liquidations. We've seen the collapse of the pound against the dollar, a further rise in inflation, a mini budget, and plagues of locusts and toads falling from the sky. I'm afraid to ask, what
yeah.
are the scores on the doors?
Well, all of those things you've just said obviously have had a huge impact with the UK economy, and obviously we have in the construction side of things also shivered as well over the last month. So where you were last month, well over £6 billion. Since all those good results come through, I know there's one day left, or it's today and tomorrow. So the team at the Builders Conference are working tirelessly. But at the present moment in time, we are only at 3.5 billion, which has not been seen for a good 18, 20 months. So yeah, it's had a huge impact. And I think what we can say really is we can think about things, what's happening today, but tomorrow is a very different day.
One of the things that bothers me about that, and I've not checked, and I'm sure you've got these figures at your fingertips. You've just said it's probably 18, 20 months since we last were down at that level. My guess is that would have been over a Christmas period or something like that.
Yeah, it normally would over one of those periods as well. So yeah, it's hugely disappointing, but not inevitable. Let's be realistic. It's, everything out there is leading towards a recession, and that's a word nobody likes to use and everything else. But when you're looking at fuel costs, which has a direct impact on everything we do on site and on construction sites, and then clients are worried about their finances, and then you say that the whole UK construction sector has relied heavily for the last 5 years on the housing sector. And, today we've seen even more mortgages removed from the marketplace. So what's that going to do to the actual people that are trying to get mortgages and move house? I don't know.
I don't like to heap bad news on bad news, but one of the things that struck me over the past few days, I think I checked the BCLive league table last on Tuesday, and it was at 3.3 billion. And at the time, I was saying, hopefully something will come out of the woodwork and we'll be at 4 billion by the time I get to speak to you. It's barely moved since then. It's almost stagnant at the moment.
It is very stagnant. And I know I was on your show typing yesterday regarding the Balfour Beatty framework for the SCAPE framework. Yes, that has been, it looks like the deal has been signed, but no projects will be coming to fruition until the end of 2023. So that gives a long time before anything can go ahead. And then there could be a moratorium in the meantime to say stop, because I understand that the government has asked all working departments, whether it be in whatever side, to look at their budgets and slash a load of money from their budgets in 2023.
Yeah, and while it would have been nice to have seen that Balfour Beatty one land at £4 billion, which would have taken us obviously to nearly £8 billion, it would have looked nice in the small print. But in actual fact, it's only one company that's likely to, well, apart from the subcontracts, it's only one company that's going to benefit from that. So from a wider industry point of view, under 4 billion is not good at all. I guess let's take a closer look. Let's go down the top five. Who in this not particularly good month came out on top?
Right. Well, we were all hoping that when Kwasi Kwarteng stood up with his mini budget, that he was going to deliver something last Friday to talk about infrastructure, because they've been kind of pushing it through underneath in the press that that's where he was going to be focusing. Because we go back to that equation, which is a few years old now. For every pound spent in construction, £1.64 goes back to the UK economy. So we are one of the leaders as a sector of bringing any country or any kind of economy out of recession. So he did stand up and say he's going to be putting those things, but with all the other measures that have come into effect, and now with the pound at this really low level, you think to ourselves, well, it's okay, we're still spending our money in the UK. No, well, a lot of money is traded. A lot of goods are traded, should I say, via the dollar, and therefore that's going to put an added pressure on everything. But going back to it, yeah, he looks like hopefully if they say what they're going to do is they're going to invest in the infrastructure of the UK, and to that end, the leader of the pack this month so far is Skanska, and they picked up this £345 million project, which is the A46 Newark bypass. The project will deliver a dual carriageway, providing 2 lanes in each direction between Farndon and Winthrop junctions. So that's a great job, but it's a fantastic signature project. But it is the only one that we have this month so far that we've researched. There's normally 1 or 2. But this month, Skanska are top of the pile. Second on the list on the league table is Kia Group, and they've picked up 20 projects, near enough the 1 a day. Funny enough, actually, if we look at this month, this is a long month as well. This is nearly a 5-week month, so it should have had good possibilities of breaking the £4.5–5 billion mark. So if you look at it like that, it does make it a double whammy, really. But yeah, Kia's a second this month, and one of their largest jobs is a £62 million project. It's at Mamborough Road, Hammersmith, and it's for new offices and a mixed-use development. It's £62 million, and the client there is Arlington Developments. And so Kia's have picked that one up, one of their 20 projects that they have picked up. Third on the list is Wilmot Dixon. And one of their largest projects, it's not the largest, but one of their largest projects is a £25 million project in West Yorkshire. And it's the demolition of the existing training centre and occupational health buildings and erection of a new fire headquarters up in, as I say, West Yorkshire. So that's a fairly decent job. And they've picked up 7 jobs. The leader of the month for the number of jobs this month is Morgan Sindall. They've picked up 32 projects this month, and the largest, and they're 4th on the list in the BCLive table. One of their largest jobs is a £35.5 million project, and that is a Unity Campus, West Street in Cambridgeshire. And it's the design and build of 3 new office buildings and a multi-storey car park, and it's phase 2 works up there. The client there for is Howard Group. So yeah, one of the largest projects they picked up is 35 million. Overall, they've picked up £171 million. I forgot to tell the overall aggregations of the other ones. Kia Group have got 300 million, and Wilmot Dixon 179 million so far, and Morgan Sindall 171. Now, 5th on the list, who've picked up an aggregation of 165 million, is Sisk. From St Albans, their St Alban office, and they've signed a deal with Quintain Estates around the Wembley area. And if people are lucky enough to visit that place, Wembley, to see their football team, not me, you'd see that I understand it's a huge, great development site around there, and many buildings are going up. And this is buildings NE02 and NE03 in Engineers Way. And it's £100 million project that they've picked up there for Quintain Estates. And I was going to say just one more. One of the other larger projects is a £125 million project, also in Wembley, but this is in Appleton. So it's just Appleton House, and that's for London Square Developments, but that's back to housing, and that's £125 million there.
One of the things that struck me when I was looking at the BCLive league table was one of our indicators is always the number of companies that have picked up £100 million or more. We've been up in the 15s and sometimes the 20s. Not this month.
No, it's 8. So we are below the average as well. So just everything it's not a case of it. It's the whole industry has actually is suffering this impact, and I hope this is only a blip, and there are going to be some major projects. There is overall, I think, if we're looking at it so far this month, 228 businesses that we found that have secured work this month, whereas in last month it was 286. So everything is down, and we're at the end of the quarter as well. So if you look at that as well, wow. Quarterly, we're down 12% from last quarter as well, if you aggregate that together. And if we stood here, if you go back and do the rewind of these shows back into last year, I'd have been talking to you about an aggregation of the whole previous year to that, I think it was, let me just get that up. I did do that calculation. Here it is. It was... I would have said as a rolling total, there's 87 billion pound, whereas that rolling total today is 70 billion pounds. So it's down 20%. So it feels like we're all busy, but how long term is that busyness? And what we've got to make sure is we've got to be careful about our costs, because they are running away with us.
Yeah, and again, I mean, I know you always highlight this point. The projects that are being let today, where are we now? End of September. Some of these will be starting very back end of the year, or possibly quite even into the new year. Absolutely. So 2023 is looking somewhat sketchy at the moment. We always get the same questions. I'm going to do regions, but I'm going to start, before we get on to the top regions, we'll start with Wales and Scotland, and I'm kind of afraid to ask that one as well.
Yeah, Scotland this month is 113 million, so it's broken the 100 million pound mark, but nowhere near the 200 million or whatever it was last month. And Wales is 97 million, so it's not far behind Scotland, but it's still second. You don't get anything for second in this game, do you?
No, not at all.
Sorry.
Lots and lots of comments here. Let's have a look. That's one that I think is worth looking at. Will government contracts be put on hold now? You'd have to think that is highly likely at this point.
Yes, and that's why I say about the SCAPE framework. They are all government-led based contracts. Yes, I don't know. Is there going to be a moratorium on it all? Probably. What that moratorium is going to say is stop this and do this, etc., etc. But we're still heading towards this general election in 18 months' time. So, yeah.
I mean,
I'm speaking to you and reading at the same time.
I will couch that with the fact that Mick is our resident cynic, but on this occasion, I kind of think he speaks at least from a point of sense,
Yes, Mick. It's so disappointing. It's so disappointing. There was such, at the beginning of the year, there was such good news and everything else. We just need a little bit of that to come back, really. And it just seems that we're going from one crisis to another crisis at this present moment in time. And we probably need a very strong leadership from Liz Truss to come forward from this point, really, to say this is what we're doing.
One of the real frustrations with this is that an awful lot of this is nothing more than sentiment. As an industry, everyone was fearful about Brexit. We just put on our big boy pants and carried on. Everyone said that COVID would have put the kibosh on the whole industry. We put on our big boy pants again and we soldiered on. And yet somebody went, recession. And all of a sudden, the wheels fell off. Exactly.
We've all started running somewhere, haven't we? Yes, somebody mentioned that, and it's a world issue. There is no doubt about that. But we've kind of reacted really quickly to this, and we're kind of focusing. There are such good and positive elements within it. If we can start to get these signature projects off the ground, and nuclear projects, some of the roads and like under Stonehenge to actually sign the deal and everything else. Because if we go forward and when these projects are all completed and everything else, people will be looking at each other and saying, what was all the fuss about? Why are we trying to stop all these particular things?
I'll be honest with you, that's my biggest worry. I mean, obviously, you want to see things like HS2 plough ahead and the major roads, but things like that nuclear program, if somebody were to mothball that for a time, fast forward 20 years, the lights are going off. We have no backup system, and unfortunately, I think it comes back to the point that you and I discussed. Unfortunately, whether it's Theresa May, Boris Johnson, David Cameron, or now Liz Truss, the decisions made today won't really impact upon them, because by the time Hinkley Point is supposed to come online, Liz Truss will be earning £1 million for an hour on the after dinner circuit.
Yeah, she'd be writing her memoirs somewhere, won't she? So yeah, exactly right. But we've, as a society, I'm going to become all philosophical here. We need to step back and say, yes, it is a bit painful to look at it that we're going to have nuclear and etc. But really, we need this, and we need to say, let's go for it. Because the lights will go out. Because these nuclear power plants don't take 5 minutes to actually construct. They take many, many, many years, because you want to make sure that they're safe and all of those sort of things. Nothing's worse than sort of like building it on the cheap as well. So we want to make sure it's safe. And so, yes, okay, you and I are of a vintage that may not see these coming online, but we need it to be in place now so we can actually develop, be here in the future and not put the lights out every other day in our houses.
I'm going to come back to regions in just a second, but my next question, which it always is, and our friend Gary Muirhead has beaten me to it. Can Neil see there'll be a downturn in the house building market? So, sector-wise, is house building the top? Is it down? My guess is it is top. It is down. How bad?
Yes. Well, only this morning did it creep over the £1 billion mark, but by a £10 million project that came through. So it's at 1.007. So it's just crept over, but it just is the £1 billion. But when we're talking normally that's 1.8 to 2 billion, it's 50% down. It really is compared to previous months as we've gone past. And if you look at miscellaneous, which sweeps up some of those mixed use developments, etc. Yeah. Let me just look at that. That is something like 300 million as well. So normally that's up about the £1 billion mark. So yeah, we are looking at quite a significant drop, really.
And I think that is the bigger concern now. I mean, you and I have spoken. In absolute truth, I think there's been a very severe imbalance.
Yes.
And I think the demand for housing has kind of skewed the figures for the last 3 or 4 years.
Yes.
But all of a sudden, if that prop has been removed, and particularly with what's going on in the mortgage market at the moment, as you mentioned earlier,
yes,
we've basically kicked the crutch out from under the wider industry, then, haven't we?
If we're not careful, we are actually damaging ourselves with the lack of housing and the movement in those sort of things. It'll be interesting. It will take a little bit of a while for this to all filter through, but yeah, it will be worthwhile speaking to certain larger developers to see what their thoughts are. Cut away from the fact of what they'll be telling the market, actually say what the real things are below. Because if you start to say it's going to go down, they've got a share price to make sure that they maintain, haven't they, for their shareholders, etc. So maybe there'll be a different comment through certain things. But if you start to see the mortgage people saying, not so many mortgages are being offered, that is a huge key indicator for the housing sector.
Yeah, just had a comment there from Nigel Williams. Seeing housing slow at this time of the year would be expected, surely. Not to this degree. I mean, this is
No,
at least one of the wheels falling off, isn't it?
it is one. Yes, they do slow. There's no doubt about that over this period of time, but it'll be interesting to see from mortgage companies, because that's where, rather than say it's the actual mortgage companies that tell the real facts out of this, because they're the people that are lending the money. There are very few people out there that are cash buyers, unless they're downsizing, but that's still a small percentage compared to the first time buyer and the new buyers in all of this.
Yeah, and again, I'm trying desperately not to be the arbiter of bad news, but having watched this along with you, Neil, over the years, there are fluctuations through the year. Obviously, August is traditionally a slow month because your research team can't get hold of anyone because they're all off enjoying the sunshine. September's usually pretty strong, October pretty strong, and then we start that slow meander down to December. If we've lost September, which looks like we have, and we lose October, we're in for a really rough ride for that final quarter, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. We're not even seeing the tenders coming through, which is obviously the ones that even haven't been submitted yet. So yeah, and I think if you look at all the press as well, the relevant press within the construction industry, a lot of the wordings coming out there. Proposed building in Bristol, proposed building here. They're not saying there is going to be a building in Bristol. So it's they get proposals, etc. Well, proposals to planning to tender to bid. There's a fair few months in between all of those processes. So yeah, I think you can see the way that we're writing things demonstrates the lack of, I don't know, good feeling within the construction industry at this present moment.
And I think also, I mean, going back to the construction media headlines as well, as an industry watcher, I've seen a gradual ramping up of liquidations. It was one or two a month. It seems to be virtually one a day these days. The writing's been on the wall for quite some time, but it just feels like it's come home to roost this month.
Yeah, and if some of those businesses, I think that the larger businesses are agile enough to accommodate for all of this, and the smaller ones, well, the larger businesses not are agile. They have got more resources to cope with the situation, and the small ones, and I'm talking about divisions 2 and 3, shall we say, they're more agile to develop certain things. It's going to be that middle band, that the tier 2s, that if they've got a 2-year contract that's on a fixed price with heavy involvement in power, i.e. lighting it up, etc., making sure things are doing, and then also the material wise as well, you could see some companies going back to clients and saying to them, if you don't give me this, end of story.
Yeah. Another comment from our cynic in residence.
Yeah, well, Mick has got it on the. He's got it on the button. Exactly right. That they are told. It's similar to the fact that you and I have spoken about this for 12 years, 13 years, or however long we've been doing all of these things together, Mark. It's a drip feed of information that a lot of businesses put out there every month to try and get a good news story every month. Whereas we can go behind the scenes. Yeah, we got 2 this month, 3 this month. If you rely on the press, that's a very dangerous way of doing it, because they're only feeding you what they want you to be heard. Exactly what that is with the shareholders. They're only feeding you what they need to substantiate their share price, etc. What the truth is behind all of that is a different, or the real-time information is a different story.
Yeah, and there's another part to that as well, particularly I think within the house building and property end of the business, in that I wouldn't say they can't lose, but if a house builder decides not to proceed with a house building development, they still have that land. They still have an asset. That they are. It's not like they're losing money. It might be temporarily devalued, but it will come back. They're quite happy to sit on that until times get better or demand or their shareholders insist. Whereas everybody, those that are standing by to actually make those houses, the materials for them, and then to actually erect them, that's a whole different game. They're not earning anything, are they?
No, exactly right. They've still got their initial capital, which is obviously the land. So, and yeah, they don't lose a great deal. I was reading the press this week also that, there seems to, I think Deutsche Bank in the city are trying to sell their building at the present moment. So you might see some buildings being sold off as well. Now, that may be where the developers come in, because their cost for housing is somewhat reduced, because you've obviously got the frame and structure there already. I can only comment, and as we've always said, comment on what we've got in front of us, and what we've got in front of us, without sending the industry into a spin, isn't very good this month.
No. On that basis, it looks like I'm going to be typing for the whole of October with my fingers crossed.
Yeah,
and quite possibly into November as well.
Yeah, I think we're probably. I really hope that this is a one-off conversation, and next month is a totally different one.
Yeah, it's interesting you should say that. As most of the viewers are aware, it is my father's funeral tomorrow, and I've been writing his eulogy. My dad's been ill for the last couple of years, but more specifically since my mum died. And one of the things that we have a commemorant, because it's a non-religious service, and one of the things that she said is, I knew my dad for 57 years, and only for a tiny, tiny fraction of that was there bad, illness and dependence and that kind of thing. If we are to put a positive spin on all of this, the UK construction industry for the last 3 or 4 years has been very, very kind. So I think before we all panic and go and invest in sandbags and batten down the hatches, it's worth remembering that, for 3 or 4 years, possibly even longer than that, we've been in the sunshine, and probably shouldn't be panicking at the first rain cloud.
No, I think you've absolutely hit the nail on the head, especially with the analogy with your dad as well. This is a couple of rain clouds that have come up, and we always say on these broadcasts, etc., you've got to take it for the whole year. Okay, now, there is a reduction if you do it on a rolling year basis or whatever, but it's still pretty good. We are still above normal. Let's hope, as I say, this is a one-off conversation, and next month we're sitting here with a great deal of smiles on our faces and everything else.
I sincerely hope so. I haven't actually read this, so I'm going to let's have a look. The confidence is not there due to the chaos raging globally, and a regional conflict in Eastern Europe is deliberately being escalated into a major war. And this insanity in demanding rapid and wide-scale deletion of internal combustion engine vehicles and equipment in the name of new religion, climatology. It's much like Scientology. It's bunk. There are times when you do wonder. Bearing in mind all that's going on in the world, is that really our biggest focus? When you've got people that can't heat their own homes, they're choosing eating over heating, or vice versa. It does feel like our priorities are perhaps a little skewed, but that's the world we live in, isn't it?
It is, and I don't think we can pontificate on this for huge amounts of times, really. And it's good to get these kind of conversations out there, but probably some of it needs to be a bit of a reset, really, and some of the things we're doing. And I know the government are looking at this IR35 to stop it now as well, which was obviously an issue. We as an industry are not the best, and sorting ourselves out. We can be quite selfish, really, sometimes, can't we? We can really, look at things very narrowly. But yeah. Probably, now you're looking at the diesel, the VAT on the diesel, etc. What impact has that had, etc. Quite a lot in that sector. Now you've got fuel on top of that as well. Do we need to go backwards and say, okay, we'll we'll take off diesel. I don't know. I would love to be an economist. I'm not. I just look at what we've got in front of us and tell you what's happening. I can't analyze it too well because it makes no sense to me sometimes. I'm not that clever.
But then that's the way economists work anyway, isn't it? A lot of it seems to be genuinely gut feel. I mean, at least you are working from facts.
Yeah.
You get the impression sometimes that economists wake up and just, you know what, had a bit of a barney with the old lady last night. I've decided recession time.
Yeah,
it really does seem to be as simple as that sometimes.
You kind of sometimes thinking that.
That's okay. Just a very quick message to say that John Fitzmaurice is having connectivity issues, and thank you for your best wishes for tomorrow, John. Much appreciated. Neil, I know you've got way better things to be doing. What I'm really hoping is that you'll hang up the phone. I know you're not on the phone, but hang up the phone, go and crack the whip over the research team, and they will find somewhere around about £500 million worth of work between now and tomorrow afternoon, in which case we can all go, you know what we said yesterday? Ignore that.
Yeah, hopefully it's somewhere down, in the cracks in the sofa that we can find, rather than the odd biscuit or the odd 5p. Let's hope it's £500 million worth of new work. Maybe somebody's out there just waiting to tell the world that they have picked up this huge, great signature project. Let's keep our fingers crossed.
I will keep my fingers crossed. Let's very quickly, some 20 plus years ago, we were talking about the need for nuclear power plants and the growth of the nation. It genuinely seems as though the future is only an election cycle away. Well said, sir.
Well said. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Neil, I'm going to let you get back to the day job. I will speak to you a bit later on in the day.
Yep.
But let's keep our fingers crossed. And
we are all keeping our fingers crossed. Yeah,
absolutely. Many thanks indeed for being here, Neil. All of it very much appreciated.
Cheers. Bye-bye.